Okay, so it's the 28th of July 2016 and I'm in the process of writing episode 83 of Time Crystal, which will appear eventually next spring in volume 3 of Time Crystal. And this is part of my author's diary, and I thought I would try creating a video. So I've got to the point where a character whose name is Ontoroni Todazoko Nithold, Professor Nithold, is at a crisis in his life. He has been communicating with the enemy of his race. He is an Argolath, which is an ant-like creature, and he has been communicating with the leading, he is the scientist, he is the leading scientist in the Argolath society. He has been secretly talking to the leading scientist in the Entroilian society. These are species of bee-like creatures. So we have the ants and the bees. And so he has been talking to this Entroilian scientist in order to try to ensure peace within their two societies, to prevent war, because both of their leaders, a king in one case, a queen in the other, both of them are aiming to start a war in order to conquer each other's territory. They live on a small island which is rather overcrowded, especially the Entroilians. So, and they're very, very different societies. So we've just reached this point in the story, and the way I normally proofread my work is by having text aloud, a speech synthesis program, read the text to me, because I find that reading it by eye, I miss errors. So let's listen to, this is what I would normally hear, if it works. It doesn't want to work.
If Linked hears any of this, I'm dead.
Let's try again.
If Linked hears any of this, I'm dead. If Linked hears any of what? Professor Nithold?
So Professor Nithold has been watching a screen with another of the Argolaths, which reveals that he is in communication with the Entroilians. And they have been talking, and it has become fairly apparent that the Argolath scientist and the Entroilian scientist have been communicating, and that of course is a capital offence. You can't talk to the enemy, especially one of the top people in the enemy's camp, without being suspected of very serious breach of security. This doesn't want to work. This happens sometimes. I don't know why. Won't work at all now. Da, 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 da. Never mind. Try again. Mon Dieu. You see, with computers, there are constantly problems. They're wonderful when they work correctly. When they don't work, they are a pain. So what I should do is have a look at the text aloud window. I think I've been through all this before. Let's just check that it works.
There is a calendar reminder which is...
So that works.
If Flenked hears any of this, I'm dead.
So that's what Nithold said. And then he heard a voice which said,
If Flenked hears any of what, Professor Nithold?
and this is what happened at the end of a previous episode, episode 81. So now, this is what happens next.
Antaroni Todazoko Nithold did not need to turn to know who had spoken. The voice of His Majesty King Flenked was echoing round the lab like his death knell. Indeed, Nithold could not move. Fear glued him to his seat. I have as good as admitted I am a traitor, he thought.
I have as good as admitted I am a traitor, he thought. So now I have a character. This is my situation, which I wanted to describe in this little video. I have a situation where a character is confronted by the most powerful person in his world, and he has as good as admitted that he's done something wrong. If Flenked is the king, Flenked hears any of this, I'm dead, he said, and Flenked heard him say that. So now I have to explain, or I have to think myself, and this is what I wanted to talk about. I have to think, and this is my record of what it's like to be an author. It's probably fairly obvious, but I thought it was worth talking about. I need to think myself into the mind of this character. I've put him in this situation. I now need to know what he will do, and more importantly, how he will feel. And so I say to myself, have I ever been in a situation where I feel threatened, severely threatened with some dire punishment for something which I have done, but which I have done for a cause which I believe to be just, because the reason Nithold has been talking to the scientist of the enemy is to try to prevent war. He always knew that what he was doing was dangerous. He did it in secret. And he, for many months, perhaps even years, for many years in fact, he has been getting away with this and doing more and more extravagant things to try to prevent a war between the two species. But now his actions have caught up with him. How does he feel? How does he feel? He feels obviously terrified. When you're confronted with your own death, your first response is to be terrified. But he must have been prepared for this. It's not new to him. He always knew that this could happen. Now in a way, he's a hero. We would look upon him as a hero. Somebody working secretly to prevent war. But in his own eyes, he's not a hero. It's something he probably felt he had no choice but to do. He had to do something. He was in a very privileged position. Nobody else was trying to stop war except one other person whom he knew, which was the leader of the Entroidian scientists, whose name is Mashendiar, by the way. So I don't think heroes see themselves as heroes, do they? Normally, real heroes are just doing what they have to do. And when life catches up with you, when your acts catch up with you, yes, you're frightened, but in fact, I don't think you panic. He must have had many sleepless nights in the past worrying about this, and you get used to living with danger, don't you? The mind, the human mind, and I assume the Argolath mind works in a similar way, they do in my characters anyway. You get used to threats and danger. When people in war situations, eventually bombs and bullets, if they're everyday things, you learn to ignore them. You just learn to live with them. And he would be in that situation. So fear, what I've got here is, will it work this time?
Antironi told as Nithold did not need to turn to know who had spoken. The voice of His Majesty King Flink was echoing round the lab like his death knell. Indeed, Nithold could not move. Fear glued him to his seat. I have as good as admitted I am a traitor, he thought.
But following this little conversation with myself, I now have, my stomach is rumbling, it's 7 minutes past 12 in the morning, I've been working since 5 o'clock, normal procedure. I now have a pretty good idea of what comes next. So you can find out in episode 83, which is part of the 3rd volume of Time Crystal. Thank you for watching.